of the Newmarket School District. I am the school district moderator, Chris Hawkins, and I want to thank you all for turning out despite the inclement weather. Just want to make sure that those of you who are town residents have checked in to vote. And if you haven't, please go out and do that. Our first order of business, as always, is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Hopefully you've had a chance to pick up a copy of the moderator's rules of procedure out there. I'm not going to review them in detail. A couple things I just want to emphasize is that these are rules of procedure. If I make a ruling on a procedural issue, the meeting has the authority to override my decision. So these are just real guidelines. They are not carved in stone. And I'm also going to exercise some discretion and allow Mr. Allen to speak on behalf of the school district. He's not a town resident. If there's an objection to that, please let me know and we can have a formal vote on whether the superintendent should be allowed to speak. But if there's none, we'll allow him to do so. If there's a motion, one motion at a time on the floor. If you want to speak to any of the warrant articles, way of question or motion or whatever, make comment. We ask you to limit yourself to 3 minutes. We will limit you to 3 minutes, and then you're free to come back up again, but only after everybody else who wishes to address the article has had an opportunity to do so. And each single appearance is limited to 3 minutes. With all that in mind, and if there's no objection to the rules of procedure or what I've discussed so far, we will proceed to discuss the school warrant. The way it works is I will read the articles. Open the floor for discussion, comment, and emotions. Mr. Allen will make a brief presentation as to each article, and then we'll open the floor up for discussion and comments and questions at that point. If the articles are not amended, they will go on the warrant as presented. Okay? So we don't have to have a motion to approve each article. All that said, to the inhabitants of the school district of Newmarket and the county of Rockingham, state of New Hampshire, qualified to vote in district affairs, you are hereby notified of the annual meeting. The first session of the annual meeting for the transaction of all business other than voting by official ballot shall be held today, Saturday, February 21st, 2025 at 10 a.m. at the Newmarket Junior Senior High School. If you're already here, you already know that. The first session shall consist of explanation, discussion, and debate of warrant articles 2 through 7. Warrant articles may be amended subject to the following limitations. Warrant articles whose wording is prescribed by law shall not be amended. Warrant articles that are amended shall be placed on the official ballot for final vote on the main motion as amended. No warrant article shall be amended to eliminate the subject matter of the article. The second session of the annual meeting to vote on Articles 1 through 7 shall be conducted by official ballot to be held in conjunction with the Newmarket town voting on Tuesday, March 11th, 2025 at the Newmarket Town Hall Auditorium. The polls shall be open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we look forward to seeing everyone there. Article 1, to choose the following school district officers: 1 school district moderator for a 1-year term, 1 school district clerk for a 1-year term, 1 school district treasurer for a 1-year term, 1 school board member for a 3-year term, and another school board member for a 3-year term. So 2 school board members, 3 years each. Article 2, shall the Newmarket School District vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $28,311,594. Should this article be defeated, The default budget shall be $28,261,333, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the Newmarket School District or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:1310 and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This is a majority ballot vote required item, recommended unanimously by the school board and the budget committee. And as a note, the warrant Article 2, the operating budget, does not include appropriations and any other warrant article. The total operating budget will be offset by estimated federal grant revenues of $400,000 and an estimated $470,229 in local, state, and federal child nutrition revenue, leaving a net budget of $27,441,365. The amount of $870,229 will not be raised by taxes. If passed, it is estimated that this article will result in an increase of 62 cents over the previous year's school tax rate of $13.34, which will result in a new estimated tax rate of $13.96. If defeated, it is estimated that this article will result in an increase of 59 cents over the previous year's school tax rate of $13.34, which will result in a new estimated tax rate of $13.93. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I did want to just take a minute to talk about the note that is on the warrant. Historically, we have tried to provide the tax implications, but as everybody in Newmarket knows, with the reevaluation, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. The rate dropped 70% in reevaluation, and so what that means, person to person varies. But I did want to highlight the fact that based on the current rate, the proposed budget I'm about to tell you results in a 62-cent increase. This year's rate is $13.34. With this increase, it would be $13.96. I want to highlight for you the fact that Jenna Mellon and I take the approach when we estimate the tax impact of taking, I guess, what you call a worst-case scenario. This imagines the scenario where every single penny in the operating budget this year is spent, there's no retained fund balance being returned to voters, and then sort of the worst-case scenario plays out. So 62 cents increase for this proposed budget is the most it will be. Historically, just as a note, we typically have 400,000 plus fund balance that's returned, which will offset that. So we would anticipate the increase is less than 62, but in the interest of transparency, we want to just make it clear that that's where we predict. Obviously, you'll see the default budget is only a $50,261 difference. So the difference between default and actual budget is not significant. And I'll explain that to you in a moment. So whenever we develop the school budget, one of the first things we do, the board and I work with the administrative team to establish what our goals are going to be. And so we established 6 goals coming into this budget. The first one was to keep the overall operating budget increase under 2% because we knew we had a teacher contract we were going to be negotiating, and we knew the teacher unit, which I'll talk about in a minute, makes up 60% of our district staff. We knew there was going to be a cost associated with that, and we wanted to make sure the total impact on the taxpayer was level compared to the last 3 or 4 years. I'm pleased to say that we accomplished that goal. We also wanted to make sure that we included funding to continue to promote all the school improvement efforts. Both buildings have school growth plans they're actively working on, and we wanted to make sure the resources and the support they needed was included, and we did that. Across our organization over the last 3 years, we've really done a lot of work on salaries, and we want to make sure you don't make changes and then regress. We want to make sure we remain competitive so we can keep people. We have a really good school culture going right now. We want to make sure we keep good people working for us. We also wanted to continue to work on social emotional learning related efforts. You may recall last year the story of the budget was sort of the shifting of federal and state burden coming to us, so we had to find resources to fund some of the mental health positions in our district. Fortunately, we were able to do that, but now we want to make sure we continue to fund the programming that those professionals are doing so we can keep that going. And then always, whenever you talk about budget development, you say, we start from the premise, we want to be responsible stewards of Newmarket's money. We recognize taxpayers, one town, the impact can be significant. So we really spend a lot of time talking about that. I like to start with the end in mind. This is a slide of the entire proposed budget that we're sharing with you. Basically everything in the operating budget with the exception of the teacher contract, which I'll talk about in a moment. The total increase is 1.97%, total cost of $539,312. When you look at it from the standpoint of how that breaks out across the organization, you can see the vast majority of this is salaries and benefits. Not surprisingly, we are a very human resource intensive enterprise. So 67% is salaries and benefits, 26% is operational expenses. And I always like to point this out because I greatly appreciate the investment this community made a few years back on renovating our schools and providing the great facilities we have. But there is an economic reality that we are paying that bond. And currently, that debt service is it says 7 on the slide, but it's actually closer to 7.5%. That's what the bond is. We pay roughly $2.1 million a year for the bond on this building. Great investment, by the way, but it's important we remind each other that we did do that 7 years ago, and it continues to be in our budget. So how do we get to a 1.97 proposed increase? Basically, we really looked at a number of things. The first thing we did was renegotiating service contracts. We have our new custodial contract that is going to save us. And by the way, our custodial services, we have an outsourced custodial services contract. We have a new provider that's going to save us a significant amount of money, about $80,000, so we're really excited by that. I also just have to do a shout out to Jana Mellon and Dave Riley for all the work they do on a daily basis and on a regular basis to make sure all of our service contracts are adhered to. And whenever we have an opportunity to lock in on a rate that doesn't impact us, such as energy costs, things like that, we get on those so we can make sure we're maximizing every dollar we have. So that was one realm that we spent a lot of time in. On the right side, you see staffing reductions. This budget does involve a reduction of 2.58 FTEs or full-time equivalent positions across the organization. One of the things we have been working on really the entire time I've been here is around, I use the phrase right-sizing the organization. So when opportunities, when people leave and we have an opportunity to say, okay, do we need that position? We look for ways to do more with less. And so we make sure that the positions that we have are necessary to provide the services. In the evaluations we did, we believe that we have 2.58 FTEs that we were able to say we don't need those, and so that's part of this 197. Another thing I'm very proud of, and this ties into the teacher contract as well, in the lower left, the health plan change. Shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Health insurance is very expensive, and when you are insuring 190 people with medical insurance, the cost can be quite significant. We have embarked on a process starting in January. We had a health benefit committee with all the employee groups represented. They evaluated a bunch of plans, and they made a recommendation to me and the board to change health plans. Fortunately, in negotiations with the teachers union, they fully embraced the change of the insurance plan. But it is a significant savings, and so we've been able to capitalize on that. Very excited with that. And then the last corner there, leveraging trust funds and food service balances. One of the things you may have heard a lot of talk at the state level about things like special ed funding and things of that sort. And one of the things that is very challenging when you're building a school budget is you're asked to predict what the needs of the students are going to be a year and a half from now. And when students arrive on your door unexpectedly with very significant needs, if you haven't been able to budget for it, it can be quite significant. So one of the things we've done in the last couple of warrant articles address this, are putting money into trust funds to guard against some of the risks that we have taken. And by doing that, it allows us to budget much closer to need because we know we have a trust fund in the event that some unexpected occurrence happens. So very, very pleased with that. Historical trends, just to give you an idea here, you can see the history of budget increases in the district over the last 5 years. You can see, going back to 21, 22, you can see typically the increase has been in the 1 to 1.2 million increase. You'll notice in 25-26, we're proposing $539,312. I want to remind everybody that that does not include the teacher contract, which is a separate warrant article. When you add the cost of the teacher contract, it brings us up to largely a flat 4.4% total increase. So I just want to acknowledge that we built this budget knowing that the cost of the teacher contract would do that. So that's where we are here. A couple of slides I'd like to share because I think it's important people understand this, particularly when you go from here's the budget to how does this impact my tax rate. One of the things that we struggle with is state and federal aid going up and down on us. And so this is a chart that gives you an indication of state adequacy aid that Newmarket has received over the last 6 years. As you can see, for FY26, we're looking at numbers very similar to what we had in 24-25. But if you go to buy a new car or you go to buy groceries, prices didn't stay the same from last year to this year. So a flat level of funding from the state actually has a negative impact. You may recall a couple of years ago, I talked to you about the story of the budget was the shifting of the local burden onto Newmarket. Our SWEP tax, which is that red bar across the top, to go back to FY24, you can see we had a pretty dramatic increase. SWEP, for those of you who don't know, is the statewide education property tax, which is, by the way, currently in some litigation that may not be legal. That being said, it's a tax that is collected locally and then returned to us. So it never leaves the town, but it's effectively the state's part of the state's contribution. You can see a couple of years ago, they dramatically increased that. What that means to Newmarket taxpayers is the pinch was felt more significantly. And you'll notice the bottom, which is the black, which is the net aid. That is grant dollars that come to us that we don't have to collect locally. So obviously, if the black part of it is higher, that's better for us. It means it has less impact. So you can see a couple of years ago, it dropped pretty significantly. It's now stable. I certainly hope it remains that way, but obviously we're building this budget on the projection that that aid is going to remain the same. And lastly, I got a lot of questions during budget development talking about per pupil cost, because I think people want to wrap their head around what does it look like. So I put this slide together just to give you an idea. On the left, you can see the state average for per pupil cost the last couple of years. And this is the most recent data available. We won't have the 24-25 per pupil cost until the year is over, because you can't figure it. But last year, the average per pupil cost for the state was $21,545, and Newmarket's was $23,269. The previous year, it was $20,323 for the state. Newmarket was $22,866. The point I want to make here, if you look at the net growth, at the state level, it's gone up per pupil 5% last year and 6% this year. Here in Newmarket, it's 4.4 2 years ago, 1.8 this year, and I anticipate the results of the 24-25 budget to show the trend continuing, because we are, as I said, really actively looking to right-size the budget to make sure we have the right staff for the students we currently have. And just not for nothing, I do want to just go back to the slide I showed you that included the bond debt. And we have about 1,000 kids in the Newmarket school system, and when you have a $2.1 million bond debt, effectively that's equivalent to $2,100 per child. So if you subtract $2,100 per child from the state, from our average, and all of a sudden we actually are less than the state average. So I just want to acknowledge that we took on significant bond debt. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions, comments, motions with respect to warrant article number 2? Seeing none, warrant article 2 will proceed to the warrant as presented. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Warrant article 3. Shall the district vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Newmarket School Board and the Newmarket Teachers Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing level over those paid in the prior fiscal year. There's a lot of numbers. They're on the board behind me. For fiscal year 2025-2026, estimated increase of $697,797. 2026-2027, estimated increase of $706,557. Year 2027 and 2028, estimated increase is $686,755. And year 2028, 2029, estimated increase $509,208. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $697,797 for the upcoming fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that will be paid at current staffing levels. The school board recommends this appropriation unanimously. The budget committee recommends this appropriation unanimously. The estimated tax impact of this article is 41 cents. Majority vote required. And I neglected to say earlier that board member Amy Tilton is unfortunately ill today, although she wanted to be here. That said, are there any questions, comments, motions with respect to warrant article number 3? I'm going to ask Mr. Allen to step forward and address it. Then we'll circle back to comment. Go ahead.
So as I said, when we built our budget, we knew that we had a teacher contract, and we wanted to make sure that the contract did what we wanted it to do and was able to afford what we needed to do to change it. First thing to note is there are 109 members of the NTA, so this makes up, as I said, approximately 60% of our staff. The adoption of this agreement really is about trying to make sure that Newmarket teacher salaries are more competitive with the region. This contract makes us more competitive. Because we have to keep in mind that when we in Newmarket are hiring people, we're competing with the Seacoast regions. We're competing with Portsmouth. We're competing with Exeter. We're competing with Epping. We're competing all of them. And we want to make sure that we don't have to be the highest paid. We want to make sure we're paying our people well so that people can choose for all the good reasons to stay in Newmarket. And that's what we're trying to create. This is a 4-year contract. Basically, it involves a 3% cost of living adjustment each of the 4 years of the contract. It also incorporates some provisions of the contract that were external, that longevity bonuses and such are incorporated into the scale, so it's more transparent in terms of who gets what. In the current contract, there are a number of external calculations that take place to determine a person's longevity. We've calculated that and moved it into the scale, which makes it very easy for a person to look at and say, okay, here's what I can expect whenever I reach that point in my career. Additionally, we have a very seasoned, veteran, experienced staff, and we wanted to make sure that this was incentivizing them to stay and help us keep getting better. So it does involve adding a salary track that encourages more professional development, and it also includes additional steps added in years 2 and 3 so that there's a place for people who are at the top of the scale to go to continue to grow. Beyond that, as I said before, this contract, because the teachers union is the largest group in the district, the benefit plan is particularly significant here, and the fact that the teachers union worked with us to make this happen is a really big deal. Significant savings for the district. We're talking, and when we talk about health benefits, it's relative gain. Insurance costs always are going up, as I'm sure many of you realize, but by making a change to a different plan, the amount of increase is dramatically less. If we stayed with our current plan, we were looking at an increase somewhere between 11 and 17%. By changing plans, that increase is only going to be 6.5%, and it actually covers more plans. So it's a better plan, and it's going to save us money. So that was very exciting. Beyond that, we're trying to make sure when teachers are asked to do more than what would be considered a full-time job, we're appropriately compensating, so we increase the amount we're paying teachers when they do beyond the full-time role. It also redefines the teacher workday and expectations around it. You may recall 3 years ago, the teacher contract included a model that had an unusual structure around Wednesdays, professional development days, and every Wednesday was an early release and all of that. This permanently removes that and comes up with different ways to address teacher professional development and so forth in the language of the workday. And then lastly, one of the things we're very proud of is trying to build a collaborative culture and hopefully get to a place where teachers are feeling more of a voice and ability to be involved in decision-making. So the contract actually institutionalizes 4 standing committees that really have a lot to do with teacher working conditions and improving the environment. One is an employee handbook committee, which looks at, all of the rules and procedures of how we function. Having an employee health benefits committee that's a standing committee, constantly looking at our benefits plan and making sure we're maximizing it so we are benefiting from it and saving the district money. We have a teacher evaluation professional growth committee that teachers are involved in. Very exciting stuff happening with reinventing the teacher evaluation model. And then the co-curricular stipend committee. Those are all things that are standing committees because those are things that are important. And it gets educators involved in those decisions and gives them a voice. So with that, I have to take any questions.
Apologies for jumping the gun. Any questions, comments, motions with respect to warrant article number 3?
Hi, is this working?
I think so.
Okay, good. Nancy Miller, 1 Merrill Lane. I've taught in Newmarket for a long time now, and I'm pleased to say both as a taxpayer and a teacher, I think this is the best contract we've ever had. I appreciate all the people who worked really hard on it. The thing that I wanted to say in particular with the salaries is bringing us up to, close to the level of the local area helps in an additional way that's not necessarily transparent to everyone. We ask our teachers to do a lot of after-school, extra special volunteer activities, clubs, and we're constantly getting suggestions for new clubs and new activities and new things we could do. If our teachers have to work second jobs because we're not making enough in our salary, they're not available to do those things. And I think that's one thing that doesn't show up in all this is that we want to provide so many extracurriculars for our kids, but if we don't have the staff available because they're leaving to go work at the gym and at the restaurants, then we don't have that ability. That's just what I wanted to add. I think it's a great contract, and I thank everyone.
Thank you. Any further comment, question, any motions with respect to warrant article number 3? Seeing none, Article 3 will proceed to the warrant as presented. Article 4, shall the school district, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only. Majority vote required. I think this is self-explanatory. There's no explanation from the superintendent. Is there any question, comment, motion with respect to warrant article number 4? Seeing none, Article 4 will proceed to the warrant as presented. Article number 5, shall the district vote to raise and appropriate $200,000 to be added to the School Improvement Capital Reserve Fund previously established for the purpose of improving, expanding, maintaining, renovating, furnishing, and equipping school buildings, and further, to authorize the use of this amount in a June 30th fund balance, available for transfer on July 1st. No amount to be raised from taxation, majority vote required, recommended unanimously by the school board and the budget committee. And note, this recommendation is in accordance with the Newmarket School District Capital Improvement Plan, 2025 through 2043, approved by the Newmarket School Board on August 1st, 2024. The estimated tax impact of the article is 0. Mr. Allen, sorry. Thank you. Getting old.
Hi, I'm Mr. Allen. So just a couple of things to remind you of. 2 years ago, we embarked on a process to develop a capital improvement maintenance plan. As I've alluded, the wonderful investment the community has made in the school facilities, but it's our job, now that we have them, to keep them that way. And so the capital improvement plan is a 20-year plan that was developed. Basically what we did was we mapped out all of the capital maintenance needs that we anticipate coming up over the next 20 years. And all of that together adds up to about $4.9 million in known capital investments needing to be made between now and 2043. The intent of we currently have 1.4 million approximately divided between two funds, which I'll show you the balances of in just a second. What this does is it puts $200,000 from the year-end fund balance into that account with the idea that by doing that every year, the money we need will be there when it comes to do these repairs, and we won't be coming back saying, okay, we need X to fix the roof or replace the HVAC system. So this is an attempt to be very judicious with the district's money. Just as a general point, these are the balances, these are all the trust funds that we currently hold in the district. The two that regard capital improvement is the second one, school repair and maintenance fund, that has a current balance of $658,597. And then the school improvement fund, which is the fourth one down, currently has a balance of $749,602.63. I did want to just take a moment. If you look at the bottom column, earnings, you'll see we made $35,000 on our trust funds this past year. I just want to commend the trustees of the trust funds for the work they've done in the last year. Last year, when I presented this, I think our total earnings was less than $10,000. So we've made a lot more money on our money, so we're not losing ground. The plan with the capital improvement plan is the school repair and maintenance fund will be spend down to the point it's nothing, and we'll close that fund out. We will keep the school improvement fund going, and that's the one moving forward that all of the contributions will go to.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Any comments, questions, motions with respect to warrant article number 5? Seeing none, warrant article 5 will proceed to the warrant as presented. Article 6, shall the district vote to raise and appropriate $65,000 to be added to the special education trust fund previously established to meet the cost of unanticipated special education expenses, and further, to authorize the use of this amount from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1st. No amount to be raised from taxation, majority vote required. Recommended unanimously by the school board and the budget committee. The estimated tax impact of this article is 0. Majority vote required. Mr. Allen.
Yeah, while this is a fairly small amount of money compared to the operating budget, I think this is a topic that I think it's important that the community understands, because it is one of the, for this year, this is the story of our challenge in building our budget. Special education funding is one of the most challenging things to predict for. Unanticipated special education costs can be significant. So for example, we could have a student move into our district tomorrow that we haven't been able to budget for. It has a need for an out-of-district placement that can be quite costly, and we have to absorb that cost. And if you haven't planned on it, it's very difficult to be able to do it without having a negative impact across your system. For next year's budget, because of shortfalls from what was promised state special education aid, we had to account for more in our local budgets. You'll see we have increased from about $880,000 to almost $1.2 million cost for out-of-district placements. By the way, it's normal to have about 8 to 10 students on out-of-district placements, but it's also normal that we submit those to the state and we get reimbursed for much of that cost. For various reasons at the state level, that did not happen. So that the concept of what used to, it's called typically catastrophic aid. You submit, and there's a formula they put it through, and then you get supposedly everything over 80% of the cost. This year, for reasons that are unclear, the decision was made not to fully fund it, and so we only got 68% of the cost, which to Newmarket meant we had to absorb $200,000 we hadn't planned on because the state did not reimburse to the level that it was supposed to. So we've had to absorb and think ahead for that. So I want to acknowledge that. But even with that, we still have to be ready in the event that we have to take on a cost that we haven't planned for. And that's what the Special Education Trust Fund does for us. Currently, there are $359,689.91 in it. By putting $65,000 more dollars in it, that brings that balance up to about $425,000. And our logic in that is it gives us insurance for a low, a middle, and a high cost of an out-of-district placement. So the lower end of out-of-district placement is around $50,000. Middle is about 125. The more expensive ones can be as much as 250. By having 425,000 in our trust fund, if situations present themselves that we have to absorb, this trust fund allows us to be able to do it without having to say we're going to cut back on books in the library or staffing or so forth. Because if you follow other school districts, there's a number of school districts that have been dramatically impacted by the shortfall of special ed funding. In the last couple of years, it's led to lots of special meetings to raise money and to address a lot of issues. So this is really, in my mind, an insurance that it gives us so we can budget to need, but it gives us that safety mechanism. So that's why this is an important.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Comments, questions, motions with respect to warrant article number 6? Seeing none, Article 6 will proceed to the warrant as presented. If there's no further business to come before the meeting at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Feinstein and Ingrid Albrin seconding the motion? Seconding the motion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Thank you. The meeting is adjourned. Look forward to seeing everybody on March 11th.